Discover the amazing transformation. How a beggar exposed the incredible power of mindset change. Jack sat huddled in the shadow of an overpass, the city thrumming around him like the pulse of a beast, indifferent and unyielding. The stench of desperation felt so thick, it clung to his clothes, a visceral reminder that the life he once dreamed of was now lost among the concrete and chaos. He glanced at his crumpled sketchbook, where blueprints danced in the dim light. Once, they were vibrant visions of soaring structures that would touch the sky, but now, they served as artifacts of a brighter life, overshadowed by the relentless grip of his current reality. The weight of abandonment pressed against his chest like a vice. He had lost not just his job or his home but the very essence of who he was. A promising architect reduced to a man scavenging for scraps on the sidewalk. Each day was a bitter negotiation. With the sun that beat down mercilessly, with the passers-by whose gazes avoided his own, with the whispers of self-doubt that clawed at his mind, taunting him about his failures. Questions spiraled through his head like jump cuts in a chaotic film. Why did it have to end this way? Did he deserve this? The judgment on their faces echoed like a gunshot in his mind. He could barely breathe. He hesitated, feeling trapped between reclaiming his identity and yielding to the shadows that threatened to consume him entirely. Nothing about his circumstances felt real, and yet they were painfully tangible. Should he even bother fighting for a future that seemed to slip further away with every whispered no? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As dusk settled, he pulled the sketchbook closer, the pages filled with memories of his former life, and somehow, the ink danced before his eyes. Jack's mind flickered back to Sarah, a whirlwind of possibility and youthful conviction. She saw him for more than a hollow shell, recognizing the flickers of brilliance glinting beneath layers of grime and despair. Their conversations had ignited something deep within him, a crumbling ember fighting for breath against a torrent of suffocating regret. But just as quickly, doubt surged. Did he wish to be saved? Or was it easier to just keep sinking beneath the waves? Part of him feared he might drown in her hopes as well, like the city was drowning him in its asphalt embrace. And yet, as they delved deeper into the world of architecture together, research on social issues igniting long-buried ambitions, dark clouds loomed. They shared dreams of rebuilding a community, but each little spark was met with snares. Jack's frustration bubbled over, simmering until it threatened to explode after a recent encounter at a local architecture firm. They had laughed at him, disregarding his work, leaving him feeling small in a way that was, well, far too familiar. How could he reclaim what he lost? Was he even worthy of it? As conversations heated during their meetings, the tension of the room suffocated him, pulling at the fraying threads of his spirit. Jack stood at the edge of something almost ungraspable, hope and despair warring within him. Could he once again transform the shadows of his past into a blueprint of the future? Jack sat there, wrestling with the weight of his emotions, the chaos of the city echoing his internal struggle. Each passing car resounded like a reminder of movement, of purpose. Yet here he was, stationary, trapped in a cycle of uncertainty and decay. The shadows lurking in his mind pressed against him, and he felt the walls of despair close in tighter. It was in that moment of stillness, hovering between fate and choice, that he summoned a flicker of resolve. The sketchbook, battered but revered, seemed to vibrate with energy. Jack flipped through the pages, tracing his fingers over rough designs, breathing life into spaces and structures, each line a testament to a spirit once radiant with ambition. He paused at one particular sketch, a community center, a sanctuary, vibrant and open, a place where individuals could flourish. It represented everything he desired to build in the world, everything he had lost. But how could he resurrect that vision when the world deemed him invisible? His heart raced, pulsating with a mix of fear and a burgeoning will to fight. Sarah's belief in him floated to the surface of his mind, a buoy in turbulent waters. He could almost hear her words, encouraging him to reclaim his essence, to rise above the circumstances that shackled him. Determined, Jack made a choice. No more waiting for others to validate his worth. It was time to reclaim his narrative, to rewrite the story that fate had thrust upon him. He envisaged the ink of his sketches blooming into life, transforming not just the world around him but himself as well. What if he could present his sketches to Sarah, showcasing the aspirations of his heart intertwined with the realities he faced? As darkness fell more fully, he emerged from his hunched cocoon, fueled by urgency. Jack pushed himself to his feet, his mind racing with a plan. He would find her. She could reignite his purpose. He set off, navigating the bustling streets, each footstep gathering confidence. The city's pulse felt different now, a rhythm he could move to. But the closer he got to her apartment, the more doubts crawled into his mind like unwelcome guests. What if she was unwilling to see him, or worse, what if she pitied him? Would she look upon his present condition and see an architect or merely a broken man? Still, the flickers of conviction flickered before him, urging him onward. When Jack finally arrived at her door, his knuckles hovered uncertainly above the wood. He hesitated, his heart thudding like a drum in his ears. Deep breaths, he thought. This was his chance, a possible pathway back to the person he knew he could be. He knocked, trembling with each rap against the surface. The door opened slowly, revealing Sarah's familiar smile, warm and inviting. He felt a rush of familiarity collide with the weight of his self-imposed isolation, a catalyst for possibilities that lay ahead. "Jack," she exclaimed, her eyes brightening. "I was just thinking about you. I want to hear everything. How have you been?" Her words, laced with genuine curiosity, washed over him. For the first time since his descent into despair, he felt seen not as a beggar or an outcast, but as Jack, the architect of dreams yet to be realized. "I've been thinking," he stammered, rallying the courage to reveal the sketches clutched tightly under his arm. "I want to show you something important." But as he stepped forward, the air thickened with anticipation. Jack was unaware of how this moment would irrevocably alter his path. Would he be able to transform not just his future but face the haunting whisper of his past? The moment hung delicately, both heavy with uncertainty and ripe with potential. He could sense change brewing in the air, yet little did he know of the challenges that lay ahead, ready to test the strength of his rebirth. And as he unfolded his sketches, a storm of emotions bubbled beneath the surface. Would these dreams be strong enough to withstand the upheaval coming his way? Jack's breath hitched as he carefully unfolded the first sketch, his hands trembling with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. This was not merely paper and ink to him. It was a glimpse of a future he desperately yearned for, a vision he could almost reach out and touch. The vibrancy of the colors reflected the flickering hope within him, the contours breathing with life, a stark contrast to the desolation that had plagued him for so long. It's a design for a community space," he began, his voice steadying as he leaned into the familiar presence of Sarah. The way her eyes sparked with intrigue made the corners of his lips twitch upward. "A place where people can connect and grow." As he presented each page, his words wove a tapestry of aspiration. He spoke of light streaming through expansive windows, of laughter filling open spaces, of creativity pouring from every corner. With each description, Jack felt the shadows of doubt begin to recede, bathing him instead in a warm light of possibility. "But why this now?" Sarah asked, a hint of curiosity dancing in her tone. "You've been through so much, Jack. What makes you think this time will be different?" He hesitated, a flicker of impatience bubbling within him. "Because I've been invisible for too long," he replied, the heat of conviction igniting his spirit. "I want to be seen not just as a failed architect, but as someone who can create something meaningful. I want to show the world that my dreams aren't dead." The weight of his past lingered in the background, pulsing through his veins like a haunting melody. He was aware of their shared history, laden with failure and regret. Yet here, in this moment, Jack realized it was crucial to confront those fears instead of allowing them to define him. He could no longer be merely a reflection of his past. he could become the architect of his present. "Jack, I believe in you," Sarah said softly, her voice softening the jagged edges of his insecurities. "But believing in yourself is the first step. Are you ready for this?" The enormity of her question struck him. Was he ready to embrace the uncertainty of pursuing his dreams? The path ahead wouldn't simply be filled with blueprints and designs. It would include sleepless nights, moments of self-doubt, and the risk of failure looming large. A crackling energy ignited within him, rooting deeper than before. "Yes," he affirmed, the words spilling forth from a newfound wellspring of determination. "I have to be." Yet beneath that determination lay a bubbling trepidation. He understood the challenges ahead, not just the external obstacles but the profound internal battles he would wage against himself. Trusting in his talent, in his vision, in his ability to dismantle the walls built by his insecurities would be the ultimate test. As Jack continued to engage Sarah, they discussed practical steps he could take to bring his designs into reality. He felt invigorated, alive with a sense of purpose. This wasn't just about architecture. It was his soul attempting to reclaim its territory, to build anew from the rubble of his past, hours past. A dance of words exchanging hope and plans. But deep within, an unsettling otherness threatened to surface. What if this aspiration crumbled like the last? As Sarah listened intently, he felt the weight of the past, the specter of his former self lurking ominously on the periphery. In the whirl of inspiration, Jack recognized an unshakable truth: transformation would require more than visionary sketches. It would demand an honest confrontation with his identity, his failures, and embracing the cold reality of fear. On as their conversation wound down and a comfortable silence enveloped them, a new understanding blossomed in Jack's chest. The journey ahead would not only test his professional ambitions but also reframe the narrative of his self-worth. Was he strong enough to face the truth and emerge not only as an architect of buildings but as an architect of his own life? That question clung heavily in the air as he pondered the many paths he could take. He knew he stood on the precipice of monumental change. And yet, the shadows of doubt whispered their insidious warnings. The time had come to face not only the world outside but the storm within. Would he find the courage to break free from the chains of his own making? Or would he retreat back into the familiar darkness? The morning sunlight streamed through Jack's window, casting a soft glow across sketchboards cluttered with ideas waiting to be born. Energy surged within him, yet the gnawing doubt still lingered. As he stretched, Jack felt the weight of yesterday's conversation. Sarah's belief in him felt like both a balm and a burden. He questioned, could he genuinely live up to her expectations or his own? Grabbing his sketchbook, Jack eyed the unfolding vision of the community space. The lines began to blur between aspiration and reality. The thrill of potential architecture buoyed his spirits momentarily, but soon, harsh memories resurfaced. His last project, a grand design dismissed before it could see the light of day, haunted him still. It was easy to imagine another failure looming just beyond the horizon. As he went through the motions of breakfast, he fidgeted, crumpling the napkin in frustration. He sought solace in the act of drawing. Each stroke soothed the connection between his heart and mind, a dance of creativity in defiance of despair. It occurred to him, however, that while he could sketch the outlines of buildings, the architecture of his self-worth remained dangerously fragile. The day had leveled itself out into clear purpose. He needed to engage with the world outside these four walls to navigate the storm. Armed with his sketches, Jack stepped into the city. The hum of life enveloped him, a mixture of bustling pedestrians and the distant chatter of street vendors. His heart raced, and the overwhelming tide of uncertainty washed over him. What if he stumbled? What if the people he approached rejected his ideas out of hand? He paused near a park, a tangle of emotions stirring within him. Directly in front of him, an old man sat on a worn bench, his face weathered and wise. Intrigued, Jack took a chance. He approached. "Excuse me, sir," Jack said, his voice steadier than he felt. "May I ask your thoughts on this design I'm working on?" The man studied him, his eyes twinkling with a mix of curiosity and kindness. "All right, let us see what you've got." Jack unfolded his sketches, And as he explained his vision, something shifted within him. The old man listened intently, tracing the lines with a gnarled finger. This is something special, young man, he said finally. But are you sure it's just buildings you want to create? What do you mean? Jack asked, confusion just surfacing. The man chuckled softly, his voice tinged with a knowing warmth. Think about it. These blueprints, they're more than structures. You're building connections, fostering relationships. Are you ready to facilitate that? Pause descended. Jack's mind raced with this revelation. It wasn't just about architectural prowess. It was about being an architect of community of connection. Maybe I'm just scared, Jack admitted, vulnerability slipping into his voice. What if they reject what I have to offer? Rejection is just as much a part of the journey as acceptance. It doesn't define your worth. The man smiled, a glimmer of hope emanating from his earnest gaze. What matters is what you learn and how you grow through it. Every setback refines your vision. The man's words pierced through Jack's lingering self-doubt, igniting a spark of understanding. Transformation demanded vulnerability, a willingness to embrace both rejection and acceptance. Could it be that these encounters would fortify his determination, rather than break him? The realization began to swirl through him, mingling with a newfound resolve. With a heart lighter yet more resolute than before, Jack spent the rest of his day seeking feedback from strangers, each voice adding a layer of depth to his project. It was exhausting yet exhilarating. Each discussion became a stepping stone toward reclaiming his identity, a defiant stand against the fears that had held him hostage for too long. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars prickled the evening sky, Jack made his way home, tired but undeniably alive with purpose. The old man's wisdom echoed in his mind. He wasn't just trying to build a community space, but something far more profound, a space where dreams could flourish. But even as he embraced this revelation, a nagging question crept back into his thoughts. Was he ready to unleash this vision amidst those who may not understand, or worse, outright dismiss it? What would he find when he dared to share his vulnerability with the world? The weight of uncertainty loomed over him like an impending storm, and he found himself staring into the unknown. Would fear uphold its power, or could he dismantle it brick by brick? The following morning, Jack woke with the sun already shining brightly through his window. The remnants of the previous day's doubts lingered like a shadow in his mind, but a flicker of determination ignited in his chest. Today would not be another day of hiding. It was time to confront the barriers he erected around himself. He grabbed his sketchbook and sat in front of his window, letting the sunlight warm his face. Each line he drew became a meditation, an exploration of his vision and the essence of his newfound understanding. Buildings became landscapes for potential connections, spaces imbued with life and promise. It was as if the very act of creation breathed new energy into him, shifting his perception from doubt to the exhilarating unknown. He focused on the details of his designs. Thoughts rushed through his mind like an incoming tide. What if he dared to host a community workshop? A gathering where residents could voice their dreams, needs, and ideas about the space he wished to create? The thought sent a thrill through him, but it was swiftly tampered by the echo of fear. What if no one showed up? What if people ridiculed his ambitions as they had before? Jack paused, pencil hovering above the paper. No more shrinking away. It was time to confront those fears, to turn the looming darkness into a canvas of opportunity. Drawing in a deep breath, he reached for his phone. His fingers trembled slightly as he typed out a simple message inviting a group of friends to brainstorm ideas for the project. It was a small step, yet in that moment it felt monumental. With the invitation sent, he found himself instantly unraveling. The weight of the context, potential rejection, and concerns began to constrict around him like a vice. But in the midst of the turmoil that followed, Jack also sensed a shift within his core. If rejection was merely a part of the journey, then surely acceptance was equally within reach. The very thought compelled him forward. Later that afternoon, he found himself at a local cafe, sketches resting on the table before him. Customers bustled around, laughter mingling with the clatter of cups. He finally took a moment to settle himself, observing people as they mingled and communicated without hesitation. A thought ignited a desire to tap into the raw honesty of social interaction. Turning inward, he deliberated over the two choices before him: retreat into the familiar safety of solitude or embrace the challenge of connection. Without overthinking it, he lifted his sketchbook and approached a couple sitting nearby. "Excuse me," he began, his voice steadier than before. "Can I show you my designs and get your input?" They looked at him, curiosity sparking in their eyes. As he unveiled the pages and started to share his vision, embers of encouragement ignited within him. Their genuine interest, far from the dismissive rejections he feared, began to dissolve his anxieties. For every concern he had over appearances, he found their engagement to be a reminder of the communal spirit he aspired to catalyze. The conversation flowed easily, even when critiques surfaced. His fear of rejection transmogrified into a backdrop against which revelations about his designs emerged. With every piece of feedback, Jack discovered strengths he didn't know he possessed: the ability to listen, adapt, and grow. As dusk began to settle, and he returned home with a fired-up spirit, Jack examined the day through a new lens. Each step had brought him closer to the person he aspired to become, but he sensed that this was only the beginning. The impossibility of limiting himself to mere designs faded, replaced by the exhilarating reality that he was constructing connections and perhaps even a legacy. Yet, just as he settled down for the night, a chilling thought crossed his mind. What if the vulnerability he felt during that moment of engagement hadn't been an isolated incident? What if sharing his vision with the world didn't result in the anticipated openness, but rather an onslaught of criticism that could weigh him down once more? With this unsettling question lingering, Jack prepared himself for what awaited him. An impending challenge, one that would require every ounce of his burgeoning courage. Would he rise to meet it, or would fear clamber back to suffocate his newfound resolve? The answer remained a mystery, and a chilling uncertainty curled around him as he drifted to sleep. The sun broke through his curtains the next day, illuminating a path of brilliant gold on the floor. Jack woke not with the previous night's trepidation, but with a refreshing sense of purpose. He lingered for a moment, the warmth wrapping around him like a protective shroud. Today was not just about overcoming fear. It was about realizing the full potential of what his ideas could achieve. He felt a flicker of excitement as he mentally replayed the encouraging feedback from the cafe. His phone buzzed, a reminder of the impending workshop that hovered on the horizon. The invitation had been sent, and although he had dreaded the thought of abandonment, there was a growing anticipation that gripped him. The prospect of sharing his work with others, of letting them into his creative world, began to feel less daunting and more liberating. Jack took a seat at the table with his sketchbook, flipping through fresh pages filled with ideas that reflected his evolving vision. As his pencil glided across the paper, he began to think of questions, not just for himself but for the people he hoped would join him. What did the community want? What could he learn about their experiences that would enrich his designs? Each thought was not merely preparatory. It became a tether, connecting him to others in ways he hadn't allowed before. Fueled by this realization, he decided to venture out into the neighborhood, sketchbook in tow. His mind buzzed with the possibilities of real-world engagement. Walking the familiar streets, he absorbed the sights and sounds around him, allowing instinct to guide him. Leaving his apartment had always felt like leaving behind the control of his personal world, but now he found himself opening up to the unknown. At the local park, Jack stumbled upon a modest gathering of people. Children played while adults chatted under shaded trees. It was a casual scene, but he sensed the undercurrents of community whispers of aspirations and shared experiences invisible to the untrained eye. Gathering his courage, he approached a small group. "Hi, I'm Jack," he introduced himself, holding his sketchbook close. "I'm working on a community design project, and I'd love to hear your thoughts." The response was hesitant but curious. One person, a woman with a gentle smile, nodded, inviting him to sit down. As he engaged them in conversation, he realized this was not just about sharing his vision but about discovering theirs. The tension he once felt vanished as he listened, truly listened. Each shared story structured a more vivid picture of what was needed in their environment. With every new insight, Jack's sense of agency grew. He was not just an architect but a bridge to connect aspirations. Hours slipped away unnoticed, and with them, the logical outlines of fear began to dissolve into a shared sense of community purpose. The dialogue shifted back to him, and with it came the realization. He wasn't just seeking validation. He was cultivating a network of ideas that could breathe life into his designs. As he walked home later that evening, a subtle shift in perspective began to settle. The workshop wasn't simply an obligation. It was a pivotal moment in transformation. But with his excitement came uncertainty. The voices of doubt crept back in what if the turnout was poor? What if his vision didn't resonate? Grimacing, Jack pushed the thoughts aside. This was a journey, and part of that journey was confronting the fickleness of acceptance, with renewed conviction. He made his way home, heart steady despite the shadows of doubt that loomed briefly only to fade once more. He pulled out his sketchbook, ready to integrate the newly gathered insights, eager to weave them into the fabric of his design. Yet, as he started sketching, a nagging realization surfaced. While he welcomed feedback and ideas, what if he opened the workshop only to face criticism from unexpected sources? As uncertainty crept back in, Jack was left grappling with whether he could risk not only vulnerability but the fallout that could impact his dream. With that question lingering ominously, Jack prepared himself to face whatever awaited him tomorrow, the tangible reality behind his evolving ambitions. The time had come to confront not only others' criticisms but his own fortified insecurities, and he felt ready, albeit uneasy. How far would willingness to be vulnerable take him when the stakes soared higher? The next morning arrived, draped in a heavy fog that wrapped around Jack like a thick blanket, suffocating yet oddly protective. The uncertainty that had nestled into his chest the night before now loomed larger, an oppressive weight casting shadows over the flickers of enthusiasm he had managed to kindle. Today was the workshop, and apprehension gnawed at the edges of his resolve, twisting it into a complex knot of expectation and dread. As he pulled himself from the cocoon of his bed, Jack's mind raced faster than the morning light infiltrating his space. His sketchbook lay open on the table, pages filled with both grand ideas and scribbled doubts. The cacophony in his head clung to the idea of rejection, amplifying the little voice that kept suggesting he wasn't enough. His vision wasn't worthy. But he could not let that win. Not today. He steadied himself with the breath of a mantra, a promise to be brave, to take that plunge into vulnerability. Arriving at the venue, his heart thudded loudly against his ribs, a persistent metronome keeping time with his footsteps. The studio space was warm and inviting, sunlight cascading through large windows, softening the edges of reality. But to him it felt overwhelmingly vast, oppressively empty. The chairs were arranged in a circle, yet he did not see a single face he recognized. A thought that turned his stomach. Preparing the materials for the workshop was an exercise in both focus and distraction. He arranged his designs around the perimeter of the room, trying to muster enthusiasm from the vibrant colors and innovative concepts. When the first participant entered, Jack smiled, but his gut twisted as he registered the woman's critical gaze, as if appraising not just his work but him as well. The uneasy tension returned, swelling within him, creating a visceral need to retreat. Instead, he drew in a breath, grounding himself in the purpose behind this endeavor. As others trickled in, Jack initiated conversations, his voice quavering slightly as he shared his vision. The initial ice-breaking moments hung heavy with precarity. Each question he posed felt like a leap into the unknown as he battled with the fear of unsolicited criticism. After sharing, an unexpected thing began to happen. The participants, engaged and curious, started bouncing ideas back and forth. What had felt daunting transformed into a rhythm of exchange, ideas sparking in the air like fireflies drawn to a flame. In that moment, Jack realized something crucial. His worth wasn't solely tethered to the acceptance of his vision. Instead, it was amplifying the voices of others and enabling them to envision their reality. This process wasn't merely about validation, it was about co-creation. Ideas that had once felt isolated in his mind now found resonance in the hearts of those in the room. The feedback was constructive, performed with an openness that reinforced his belief that he had indeed tapped into something meaningful. However, there was a palpable shift when a newcomer took the floor, a sharpness in her tone that silenced the room. Her critiques sliced through the security blanket that had just begun to wrap around Jack's shoulders. "What you're proposing lacks depth," she said, folding her arms. It felt like a punch. The wound of vulnerability he had opened for others to tread upon stung sharply. Instead of retreating into himself, a bold realization struck Jack. He didn't need to defend his work in the face of criticism. That wasn't what this space was about. Growing from this encounter would mean confronting it head-on. "What perspective do you think is missing?" he asked, the question breaking the tension. The mere act of engaging rather than retreating transformed all that followed as the session progressed. He navigated the complexities of conflicting ideas and pushed through the discomfort, feeling as if he was simultaneously leading and being led. Yet, while he stood stronger, shadowy doubts lingered. Was he truly equipped to handle the variance in reaction, particularly when passion and defensiveness clashed at the edge of his newly fortified hope? By the end of the workshop, Jack felt a stir of quiet triumph mixed with lingering questions. Success had blossomed amidst the chaos, yet he faced a reality he had never anticipated. What other truths lay hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered in his journey? The intensity of the experience had illuminated paths he had yet to explore, and as he closed the sketchbook, it was clearer than ever that the true test of his evolution as a designer would be not just in acceptance, but in the unearthing of resilience. With that haunting realization echoing in his mind, Jack stepped outside to the crisp air. The intensity of day's revelations loomed. Would he embrace the challenges ahead, or retreat into the shadows of fear yet again? The next chapter awaited, filled with intricate decisions and the strength yet to be discovered. Jack took a deep breath as he stepped outside the studio, where the crisp air tinged with the scent of fresh grass met his flushed skin. He gazed at the seagulls circling above, their cries echoing through the stillness, and felt an unexpected urge to move forward, to confront the fears that had lingered like ghosts in his mind. The workshop's discussions replayed in his thoughts, punctuated by that one sharp critique that had threatened to unravel his newfound confidence. His legs urged him down the street, each stride a deliberate step towards clarity. Jack's mind buzzed with the intimate dance of ideas that had emerged during the session. They weren't merely thoughts but signals. He had ignited something valuable. The experiences of others had enkindled a flame within him that he now recognized as purpose. Yet the edginess of self-doubt whispered again, demanding to be silenced once and for all. Instead of walking home, he veered towards a nearby park, a place where nature intertwined with the urban rhythm. He sought solace beneath a sprawling oak tree, its sturdy branches cradling the weight of memories from years long past. Sitting on a bench, he pulled out his sketchbook and stared at the images that sprawled across the pages. They were blueprints of aspirations, half-formed dreams fueled by moments of hope. But now they needed a new direction. As he sketched, Jack allowed his thoughts to flow freely. He penned reflections on vulnerability, resilience, and the crux of creative expression. The awareness dawned on him that each line was not just a design but an invitation for dialogue, a chance to share a part of himself with the world. What if he created not just for acceptance but to provoke thought, to question the status quo? The idea of creating a bold project arose, one that would transcend traditional norms and engage with those who dared to challenge him. Suddenly, a commotion broke through his reverie. A figure in tattered clothing and worn shoes scrambled across the park, his demeanor exuberant, yet his face etched with lines of hardship. Jack watched, intrigued by the man's fervor. The beggar, as Jack had instinctively labeled him, paused, raising his hands and gesturing animatedly to an audience of passers-by. There was no shame in his voice. Rather, he was enraptured by his performance, sharing stories of struggle and resilience that seemed to captivate the small crowd. In that moment, an epiphany struck Jack with remarkable force. This man, exposing his deepest vulnerabilities to the world, was living the power of mindset change. He articulated his hardships not as chains, but as a catalyst for inspiration. Jack felt himself leaning forward, pulled by an invisible thread of understanding. The beggar held court, reframing despair into a tapestry of possibility. The contagious energy pervaded the park as if every listener was transformed, weaving their own narratives into the fabric of shared experience. This was exactly what Jack had endeavored to create within his workshop, yet here it was alive and breathing before him. His heart raced as he pieced together the realization. Deep engagement and the power of mindset could serve as a framework for his upcoming project. It should provoke thoughts and inspire change both for himself and for others. This transformative moment marked a radical shift not only in his perspective but in his approach to design. Empowered by this fresh vision, Jack rose from the bench, energized. Walking home, he no longer felt the weight of uncertainty. Instead, he was equipped with a wellspring of ideas to explore and cultivate. He saw every fear about his capabilities and how they had been mere shadows, crumbling under the light of courage and creativity. But the question lingered: how far was he willing to push his boundaries to manifest this new vision? Would he step out of the frame of comfort he'd long adhered to, or would the familiarity of fear draw him back? As night draped its dark cloak over the cityscape, Jack's resolve crystallized. It was time to confront the unknown, test the limits of his ambition, and draw inspiration from those whose lives echoed the same struggles he sought to illuminate. The city buzzed around him, and somewhere in the distance, that undeniable urge began to burn bright again. It was clearer now than ever. The next step in his journey awaited, ready to dive deeper into the unknown, and reveal what lay just beyond the horizon. With each step towards home, Jack found himself grappling with the implications of his newfound vision. The hum of the city contrasted sharply with the chaotic thoughts in his mind. He realized it wasn't just about creating a project. It was about embracing a philosophy of creative transformation, one that challenged barriers and shattered expectations. It was about crafting narratives that went beyond aesthetics and spoke to the human experience. As he approached his street, Jack could feel a sense of urgency welling within him. The critiques from the workshop had unearthed something deeper, an internal conflict that had long simmered beneath the surface. This wasn't merely a fear of failure. It was a fear of not truly showing up to the world. Could he harness the vulnerability he had witnessed in the Beggar, use it to fuel his reflections, and translate that into the bold project he envisioned? The moment he slipped into his cluttered studio, pressures of the outside world began to seep in, vying for his attention. Yet, beneath the cacophony of self-doubt, an unwavering determination emerged. Jack understood now that he had to streamline his focus, to hone in on the essence of what he wanted to achieve. He needed a storyboard that mirrored the intricacies of human experiences, a beacon that called for vulnerability as strength. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, he glanced at the chaotic sketches adorning the walls. Each piece spoke to his past, harbored fragments of his journey, yet they felt disconnected from this new sense of purpose. How could he fashion a masterpiece that not only echoed his spirit but resonated with others? Without a moment's hesitation, he began tearing down the sketches, letting go of the past with decisive actions that mirrored his inner resolve. The next few hours morphed into a frenzied space of creativity. He sketched ideas, blending emotions with visuals, allowing concepts of resilience and vulnerability to intertwine. Each line he drew was imbued with intention, a cathartic release that reflected his transformation. Yet, even as he crafted potential designs, shadows of uncertainty stirred in the background. Was he adequately channeling the essence of what he witnessed? Could his interpretations evoke the same resonance? Breaks punctuated his creative frenzy, moments where Jack paced the room, wrestling with the impending confrontation with his fears. His internal dialogue shifted into confrontational territory. He thought about the critiques, about comparisons that plagued his thoughts. Was he talented enough to pull off the ambitious narrative he envisioned? Was he capable of drawing out the stories of those marginalized, like the Beggar, and translating them into impactful art? It was during one of these reflective interludes that he recalled a key phrase from the workshop: art as dialogue. The words circled through his mind, igniting a deeper understanding. Actual dialogue, genuine conversations about struggles and resilience, were at the heart of his project. He could not solely rely on personal insight. He needed to elicit authentic stories from others, to weave them into his work, to create a multidimensional tapestry that spoke to shared experiences. Fueled by this revelation, he wrote down a plan. He visualized an interactive exhibit that encouraged participants to share their narratives alongside his art, creating a collaborative space for vulnerability. It was time to actively engage with those whose stories he aimed to portray, and in doing so, he too could confront unyielding fears. Jack glanced at the time. Night had fallen deeply, and a new sense of excitement tinged his exhaustion. He couldn't abandon the energy that pulsed in the air. He was on the brink of something profound. Tomorrow would bring the start of something completely different: conversations with strangers, their stories, and a shared exploration of resilience. As he turned off the lights and stepped into the humidity of the night, he felt that palpable heartbeat of anticipation. Would he be able to truly connect with those he would meet? What narratives would unfold, and how would they reshape his understanding of creativity and vulnerability? The next day would demand action, and with that realization came a steely resolve. A new chapter awaited, one that would stretch him beyond his comfort and require him to listen, absorb, and reshape his vision. He paused just before closing the door, inhaling the cool night air, the future flickering ahead like a distant star, both daunting and irresistible. Jack stood in the alleyway, the echoes of the bustling city a constant reminder of his journey. He had arrived here transformed, not merely as an architect of structures, but a creator of connections. The past years, once suffocating shadows, had reshaped into lessons, illuminating the path of resilience. He clutched a folder filled with his new designs, inspired by the stories of those he had encountered: the neighborhood children, the elderly who had shared their dreams, and even the beggar who had taught him the power of perspective. No longer did he view his designs merely as blueprints. They were living narratives woven through collective voice, connecting the aspirations of his community with the resonance of their lived experiences. Working tirelessly, Jack had invited dozens for brainstorming sessions, each interaction a canvas for dialogue. He listened, absorbed, and infused their hopes into the framework of his community design project: a vibrant space equipped for artistic expressions, workshops, and gatherings. Each stroke of his pencil now illustrated vibrant spaces of mutual growth, a testament to the human spirit's ability to rise collectively. "Are you ready to present?" Sarah's voice pulled him from his thoughts, grounding him before the meeting that loomed before him. Jack inhaled deeply, recalling how far he had come. He had faced rejection, sat with critics who shattered his ideals, yet every moment had fortified his resolve. Just a year ago, he had cowered in a corner, invisible to the world. Today, he felt electric, charged by purpose and passion. He had learned to elevate their voices alongside his. This project was as much theirs as it was his. As he stepped into the community hall, the room buzzed with anticipation. Chairs were arranged in a semicircle, filled with familiar faces, the very individuals whose stories had breathed life into his designs. Heart racing, Jack took center stage, the weight of every encounter hanging in the air. "Thank you all for being here," he began, a calm resolve anchoring his words. As the murmurs faded, he unveiled the designs, each page representing vibrant discussions from the community and a formidable sense of shared vision. "This is more than a building," he declared, feeling his confidence resonate in the room. "This is a home for us, a place where every voice matters, where creativity flourishes, where we can all connect." Enthusiasm ignited in the atmosphere, moving seamlessly between him and the audience. He watched as smiles blossomed, discussion sparked, and validation poured in. Sarah's approving nod encouraged him. They shared in the pride of craftsmanship born from vulnerability and courage, an architect who wasn't just building. He was inviting others to build alongside him. When the meeting drew to a close, applause surged through the room, a tangible acknowledgement manifesting his transformation. With a palpable sense of pride swelling in his chest, Jack felt a fulfillment that had eluded him for so long. No fear, no rejection could dim the magnificent light of achievement that shone from within. That evening, as he sat reflecting on the day's success, Jack gazed at the skyline, a wave of gratitude washing over him. He felt whole again, every step along his path revealing layers of strength, compassion, and undying ambition. He had not only rebuilt his career, he had cultivated his soul. The vulnerability he once perceived as a weakness had proven to be his greatest asset. Jack had transformed his failures into stepping stones and conquered the doubts that once threatened to swallow him whole. A new architect emerged, grounded in purpose and ready to renovate not just spaces, but lives. With this realization, one last thought graced his mind. Tomorrow, he would facilitate a new workshop, one that would weave the stories he had collected into an exhibition. He felt the weight of his past dissolve, leaving behind a blueprint for a legacy defined not by loneliness, but by connectedness. This was only the beginning. Now, I urgently call upon you, subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to support the channel. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of these actions. Don't wait even one more second to share.